Hello, welcome to our channel. Today's topic is, are we witnessing the beginning of a US-China currency collaboration in the oil market? What if the biggest shift in global oil markets isn't happening in the headlines? The world's most two strong economies, the US and China, are competing in many sectors, but also adapting to each other in other domains. More than 50 years. Oil has been predominantly priced in the US dollar, but now we are seeing changes. The petroyuan is also being used to purchase oil. China and other nations are pushing for the acceptance of yuan currency in oil transaction, the weaponization of the US dollar at the world stage is the main factor of these changes. Are we witnessing the beginning of a US-China currency collaboration in the oil market? That's the question we are asking. Since the 1970s, the global oil system has revolved around what we call the petrodollar. The United States offered its military protection to the Gulf nations. In return, these countries had to price their commodities, principally oil, in the US dollar. The gold standard was pushed aside to give priorities to the US dollar. This was a brilliant idea for the US. The US dollar currency was in high demand in the international trade. It went beyond the primary agreement, which was related to the oil market. More capitals were invested in the United States due to the privilege of using the US dollar. Funds were repatriated to the United States for investments in infrastructures, industries, and many more. The notion of world reserve currency picked up. Gulf nations also got their fair share. Stability. Economy boosted. The tourism industry developed at a rapid pace, and those nations became vastly rich with the petroyuan. A new scenario is being written. China is reducing its exposure to the US dollar. Other nations are using the same strategy. They all understand that a currency is not only a monetary tool, but also a geopolitics tool if you accumulated a lot of that currency. For now, the petroyuan is giving a new balanced strategy to many oil or non-oil importers. A financial and geopolitics shift welcomed by many. Are we witnessing a gradual coexistence, a quiet diversification, or an unintended form of collaboration? 1. The power of the petrodollar. The petrodollar gives enormous advantages to the United States. The stake is high if part of the privilege offered by the petrodollar diminishes. What are the four main advantages? Global demand for dollars, lower borrowing costs, constant demand for U.S. assets, financial and banking system control, power to sanction a nation as dollar needed for trade to enter China. The rise of the petroyuan. China's strategy is straightforward but powerful. China is by far the largest oil importer. As such, it can dictate in which currency is willing to buy this commodity. The leverage has changed as China was not at this position before. Oil suppliers are constantly reminded to sell their oil in yuan if they are dealing with China. The geopolitics noise in last 2 years gives more arguments to China and many other nations to buy their oil in yuan. China has also launched yuan-denominated oil futures contracts in Shanghai. Why is it important? Because it allows oil exporters to trade without relying entirely on the dollar, reduce exposure to U.S. sanctions, diversify their currency reserves. China's model interests Russia, Iran, and even parts of the Middle East countries. 3. Is this a threat or an adjustment? Generally speaking, we can see the adoption of the petroyuan as a challenge to the US, but China still has large reserves in US assets, and so far, the majority of global oil trade is still in dollars. The US financial system remains deeply entrenched. Global investors still trust dollar liquidity more than any alternative. So, we are not seeing a replacement but a diversification for the quiet collaboration. There's no agreement for the two systems function side by side. The petroyuan enters into the system and trying to grow. An irreversible trend view the way the dollar dominance is perceived nowadays. What the scenario of this collaboration? A. The US benefits from stability. The United States doesn't necessarily need 100% dominance. What it needs is continued global trust, deep liquidity, systemic stability, allowing some diversification can actually reduce pressure on the system. B. China benefits from gradual integration. China cannot replace the dollar overnight. China wants power but a control exposure, unlike the US. Instead, it is building trust in the yuan, slowly expanding its use in trade, avoiding financial shocks. This gradual approach avoids triggering global instability. See oil producers hedge their bets. Producers, especially in the Middle East, are playing both sides. 5. The role of geopolitics. Geopolitics is a key changing factor. Sanctions, trade tensions, and financial fragmentation are pushing countries to rethink dependency on a single currency. BRICS organization is thinking, refining ideas, and taking steps to reduce exposure to the dollar-based systems. The shift is gradual so that many people don't notice it. 6. What this means for the future. We envision 3 scenarios about this subject. Scenario 1, dollar dominance continues. The petrodollar remains dominant with minor diversification. Scenario 2, dual system world. Dollar and yuan coexist in global oil trade. The world will see a change in oil market. Scenario 3, fragmented market. Oil trade becomes regionally segmented by currency blocks. The world will then notice big gaps in oil market. What is our most likely projection? A. Hybrid system, multiple currencies, increased complexity, but also resilience. Conclusion. We have seen and heard the story of the petrodollar versus the petroyuan as a future battle, but currently it's the coexistence between two systems for more choices and flexibility. The dollar cannot be the only currency needed for oil purchases. Neither the yuan. More alternatives should exist for dynamism of the world economy. It's also up to the US or China or Europe to be more convincing and appealing for someone else to use their currency. Not sanctions or coercion will win over. So the real question is no longer will the petroyuan replace the petrodollar, but rather can the global system function with more than one dominant currency? Thanks for watching. To support our work, please like, comments, and subscribe to this channel. See you on the next one.